I looked at the natal charts of 6 serial killers to see if I can find a pattern in their aspects. I looked at the different placements of their planets within the natal chart, and I also looked at the aspects between the planets and if there are common aspects and placements that serial killers share. Noted that some placements and aspects are prevalent in 3 or more of the charts, which essentially leads me to believe that there might be some kind of pattern. Perhaps certain placements have more likelihood to result in a person being a serial killer. So I'm not saying that if you have any of these aspects, you're gonna be a serial killer, but what I'm saying is that some aspects seem to be a little bit more likely in the charts of a serial killer. So firstly, let's dive into which serial killers I will be studying and what crimes are they known for. Our first killer is John Wayne Gacy. He was known as the Killer Clown and was one of the most disturbing and prolific serial killers in American history. Between 1972 and 1978, Gacy raped, tortured, and murdered at least 33 young men and boys, burying most of the bodies in the crawl space of his suburban Chicago home. He lured many of his victims by posing as a successful businessman who was hired for construction work, or by dressing as his alter ego, Pogo the Clown, at children's parties. His case shocked the nation with its depravity and the way that he managed to hide his crimes in plain sight. The second chart I looked at is Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was a charismatic, intelligent psychopath who confessed to brutally killing over 30 young women across several states in the 1970s. Though the actual number remains unknown. He would rape, beat, and strangle his victims before engaging in acts of necrophilia. Bundy managed to escape police custody twice, terrifying the nation as the scope of his vicious killing spree grew. His handsome looks and charm disguised the horrific darkness within. The third chart I looked at is Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer is known as the Milwaukee Cannibal, who committed 17 gruesomely horrific murders between 1978 and 1991. He lured his victims to his home where he drugged, strangled, and dismembered him, and in some cases even consumed their flesh and organs. Dahmer kept his victims' severed heads in a refrigerator and meticulously saved hundreds of sickening Polaroid photos documenting his acts. The fourth chart I looked at is Harold Shipman. Harold Shipman was a highly respected British physician who used his elite medical training in an utterly evil way by murdering an estimated 218 of his patients over 23 years by administering lethal doses of diamorphine. Shipman's victims were mostly elderly women who trusted him completely. The fifth chart I looked at is the chart of Albert DeSalvo. He was known as the Boston Strangler. He confessed to raping and killing 30 young women between 1962 and 1964, entering their apartments and using their nylon stockings to strangle them. Although later evidence threw doubt on some of the murders he confessed to, his string of stalkings and killings across Boston sparked mass hysteria and terror among residents. And then the sixth chart I had a look at is Dennis Rader. He haunted Wichita and Kansas for over 30 years. Between 1974 and 1991, he killed at least 30 people, sending grotesquely detailed letters to the media and police describing his sickening crimes, including methods of torture and strangulation. His ability to evade detection for decades while tormenting authorities was particularly chilling. So the first aspect that I noticed was the most prevalent was Pluto sextile Neptune, but I'm not going to count this aspect because this is a generational aspect, meaning that all people born during a particular time will have this aspect. I'm going to dive into the aspects that aren't generational aspects that came up in these charts more often. The first aspect is a very close conjunction between the Sun and Mercury. This aspect is present in Ted Bundy's charts, Jeffrey Dahmer's charts, Alberto DeSalvo's chart, as well as Dennis Rader's charts. So in essence, 4 of the 6 killers' charts had a close conjunction between the Sun and Mercury. It's It's important to mention that 30% of individuals in the world will have a close conjunction between the Sun and Mercury because Mercury and the Sun travel very close together. However, I did note that the close conjunction between the Sun and Mercury is a lot more evident in the charts of these killers. When the Sun, which represents your ego, your instinctive self, comes together with Mercury, which represents your mind, it basically means that you will embody and pretty much act on a lot of the thoughts that you have within your mind. You instinctively create situations in your life where you can manifest, act on, and experience particular thoughts that you have. So the Sun conjunction with Mercury gives a person a sharp intellect and an ability to analyze and synthesize information very well. This aspect also enhances cognitive function as well as verbal articulation, and it makes it easier for the person to process complex plans and articulate them effectively. So if a serial killer has this aspect, it means that they have an enhanced ability to plan meticulously and foresee potential obstacles and adjust their strategies accordingly. They can also use their communication skills very persuasively. The serial killers who have this aspect excel at deceiving their victims and law enforcement particularly, and use charm and articulate their speech to create false narratives or alibis. The capacity to think on their feet and manipulate conversations is a very big advantage in evading capture. The next aspect that was quite common in the killer's charts is Sun conjunct Venus. Jeffrey Dahmer, Harold Shipman, and Albert DeSalvo had this aspect. So the Sun also travels quite close to Venus, but the exact conjunction between the Sun and Venus is less common than the exact conjunction between the Sun and Mercury. I would say that about 15% of the population has this aspect. But it also seems to be more likely in the chart of a serial killer because 3 out of the 6 charts have this aspect. The conjunction between the Sun and Venus gives a person a natural charm, attractiveness, and a sense of social grace. People with this aspect will have a very pleasant and likable demeanor, and it will make it very easy for them to gain the trust of others. Serial killers with this aspect will use their charisma to lure victims, gather their trust, and lower their defenses. They have a strong sense of manipulative charm. They will exploit their own attractiveness to create a facade of trustworthiness and friendliness. And this will make it very easy to deceive their victims and elude suspicion from authorities. Killers who have this aspect will also have enhanced social skills. They're really good at reading social cues and adjusting their behavior to fit various social situations. This aspect also makes it very easy for someone to live a double life. The next aspect is the Sun trine Saturn. This aspect was present in John Wayne Gacy's charts, in Ted Bundy's charts, and in Albert DeSalvo's charts. A person who has a trine between their Sun and Saturn has a lot of discipline, patience, and has a very methodical approach to tasks. They're highly organized and capable of long-term planning. If a serial killer has this aspect, it means that they can meticulously plan their crimes over extended periods, ensuring that each detail is carefully considered and executed with precision. Killers with this aspect will also have a calm and composed demeanor. They may appear unassuming and collected, which helps them avoid suspicion and maintain a facade of normalcy. So 3 of the 6 charts had a trine between the Sun and Saturn. So the next aspect that came up in 3 of the charts is a declination aspect. This aspect is the moon contraparallel to Uranus. So what is a declination aspect, you might ask? Declination in astrology refers to the distance a celestial object is north or south of the celestial equator, similar to latitude on Earth. So for example, when 2 planets have the same declination, meaning they are both north or both south, similar to a conjunction, this will indicate harmony. However, when 2 planets have the same degree of declination, but one is north and the other one is south, similar to an opposition, this indicates tension. So the killers who had this particular declination aspect was John Wayne Gacy, Ted Bundy, and Dennis Rader. So the moon contraparallel to Uranus means this person could have emotional instability and sudden unpredictable mood swings. Serial killers with this aspect might experience experience abrupt emotional reactions that can lead to impulsive and erratic behavior. Uranus is associated with a strong need for freedom and rebellion against constraints. This aspect can manifest as a disdain for societal rules or norms, leading to unconventional and often antisocial behavior. This is something I've noted is very prevalent in individuals who have moon contraparallel to Uranus. The next aspect I noticed in 3 out of 6 of the killer's charts is the moon on the descendant. This aspect is present in Dennis Rader's chart, Albert DeSalvo's chart, and in Jeffrey Dahmer's chart. So why is the moon on the descendant more prevalent in a serial killer's chart? The descendant is the cusp of the 7th house, and it represents partnerships, relationships, and how we interact with others. The moon represents our emotions, instincts, and subconscious mind. This means that individuals with this placement will have an emotional state that is deeply influenced by their interactions with others. For serial killers, it might mean that they project their emotional needs and instability onto their victims, seeking out relationships that allow them to exert emotional control or fulfill their disturbed needs. This placement also indicates a strong need for emotional security and dependence on others. So killers with this aspect will seek to dominate and control their victims to fulfill their emotional voids. The moon here also suggests that subconscious emotional drives strongly influence how they form and perceive relationships. So these killers might be unconsciously driven to form relationships that allow them to act out their hidden emotional disturbances. And this is something that I've noticed is largely prevalent with people who have their moon on the descendant. So often individuals with moon on descendant will manipulate others to satisfy their own emotional needs, and they can often form very deceptive and manipulative relationships with people. And then the last aspect, which was quite interesting to me, that was more prevalent in the 6 charts I looked at, was Jupiter in the 3rd house. Jupiter in the 3rd house is present in Dennis Rader's chart, in Jeffrey Dahmer's chart, as well as Ted Bundy's chart. However, I just need to add a note here that we do not actually have the birth time for Harold Shipman. So I was unable to assess whether Harold Shipman had, for example, moon on the descendant or Jupiter in the 3rd house. So Jupiter in the 3rd house gives a person excellent communication skills. It will make them incredibly persuasive and charismatic, and they're actually able to use their words to influence and manipulate others. They also have the ability to articulate thoughts clearly into a manipulative type of speech, allowing them to create believable stories and alibis. This placement also indicates someone with an expansive and strategic mind. So serial killers with this placement will use their broad thinking and planning abilities to meticulously plot crimes. This aspect often helps a person think several steps ahead. Those with Jupiter in the 3rd house are often very resourceful and clever people, so they'll find innovative and different ways to commit crimes and to avoid being caught. So Jupiter's influence amplifies anything it touches. So when it's in the 3rd house of Gemini, it essentially amplifies a sense of curiosity. So if a person has a sense of curiosity with maybe more darker acts or criminal activities, they could really act on this with this aspect. Serial killers with this aspect could be driven by a desire to explore the darker aspects of human nature and society. The influence of the 3rd house in Gemini makes a person much more willing to do things that will let them step out of their comfort zone. So serial killers with this aspect can take very bold and dangerous risks, driven by a sense of invincibility or this belief that they won't get caught. There's also a sense of duality in communication with this aspect. So these killers will present a charming, trustworthy exterior while hiding their true sinister intentions. What a person with Jupiter in the 3rd house can be great at is deceptive tactics, where they're very good at lying and creating false personas for themselves. And this makes it very difficult for others to see through their deception. So there you have it. Those are the aspects that I noticed came up more regularly while assessing the 6 charts of different serial killers. Let me know your thoughts. What do you think of my findings? Do you agree that you think that these particular aspects can make for a more accomplished and more clever serial killer? Do you maybe have any of these aspects yourself and want to comment on that? Let me know. Subscribe to my channel if you have not already. Like this video if you enjoyed it. And check out the link to the description of this video to see the link to my website and my socials and to see what I'm up to. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.